Hey there, showtime. Welcome to Supercharge Fridays. This is week number, what is it? Week number 59. How are you guys? Come in the comments, drop in. There's a little bit of delay always with our social media channels. We should be live right now on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. And we have a super duper special guest. I want to introduce Mark Anthony Dyson. Mark Anthony is like, I don't know what to say. I consider the royalty of career thought leaders. He's been around the block a few years. And chances are that if you have read a very good article online, chances are it was in the ladders, it was in balanced careers, it was in financial diet or the muse, and chances are Mark Anthony wrote it. So I'm sorry, not Mark Anthony, Mark wrote it. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce the one and only Mark Anthony Dyson. Welcome to Supercharge Fridays.
Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm here to serve. So, what's up?
Fantastic. I can't wait to get started because we have a very interesting topic, Mark. We talk about job search a lot here, and I know you do as well. And I don't have to spell the obvious. There's a certain C word that's been going around, but it's not just about that. Things have been changing even before the
Mhm.
pandemic hit us. And I think it's like, okay, it just kind of accelerated a few things that maybe would have happened eventually, right? So let's talk
Mhm.
about um, everything related to the modern job search. And before we do that, for anyone in the audience who may not be familiar with you, would love a little bit of sneak peek into your backstory. How did you start blogging and writing and everything that you're doing today?
Yeah, well, um, I would say, and I've been saying for a long time, that I was abnormally born into this space just by chance during the Great Recession of 2008, which was the last time everything kind of seemed like it dropped from the bottom.
Yeah.
Um, I was presented, I was doing just casually some resume writing for people, and my brother-in-law called one day and said, "Hey, you should start a company, and my wife and I got a name for that company for you." And so I said, "Why not? I can see what's up, and it doesn't hurt to make a little extra cash other than that, right then."
But don't you
So
love these? Don't you love these light bulb moments, Mark, when they
it,
happen?
I don't know if the light bulb went off at that particular time, but did. I became curious about what's involved in the career development space. I've given advice. I knew compared to now, I knew very little. So probably for the next, other than starting the business and doing more business, as I begin to get more knowledge and begin to hone my skills, opportunities came my way, and it wasn't that far after that that I was able to get a couple of contracts, which led to another big contract, which led to some workshop facilitation, lots of writing, lots of coaching virtually, and traveling involved in it too. So when that ended, I still had a business where I didn't have to do much of anything but to be more active online and to for people to find me and find my services at the time, which was basically resume writing and a lot of career coaching. But I got disenchanted along the way with the resume writing. It wasn't my sweet spot that I felt. And I was writing articles at the time because at the time was the explosion of social media, and that was the way you market. Nobody's going out and handing out business cards and flyers anymore, or it didn't make sense to when you could reach thousands with one tweet or with one LinkedIn update. Which, by the way, I really wasn't. I was more into Twitter
Yeah,
at that
LinkedIn
particular
at that
time.
point wasn't so much content, right? It was like a
It
dumping
was
ground for resumes.
It was well, they didn't have the LinkedIn publishing, and they didn't have
Correct.
some of the things that we see
Correct.
at now. Now it's really the hot spot. Well, it's still a hot spot, but I think I'm digressing a little bit. But where I'm headed is that I began to write stories that began in stories in sometimes in the form of reporting to relate to people and to capture attention and to help people. So I started the Voice of Job Seekers back in 2011. Blog, basically, I was start just writing started articles, and after about a year and a half of writing to radio silence, people began to notice for whatever reasons. Now there 10,000s, probably 100,000s of career blogs of all types. Most people don't write long enough to really see, for your thoughts
Success.
to capture. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I continued, and fortunately, there were some things that happened along the way where it caught traction and it brought a network and exposed me to a network of really great professionals. And from there, not too far after that, 2013 was the podcast. 2016, I dissolved my resume business completely and focused in on writing career stories in the form of articles and long form articles and a little white paper that I developed. Started to gain some traction and gain some attention, and from there, other things had happened to the point to where now. Uh, Probably more than 700 articles later, and ebook with 400 plus modern job search tips, and all this other stuff that I do. Here I am.
Fabulous. Wow. So I want to say that again. There's an ebook with 400 plus tips for modern job search. And can that be found on thevoiceofjobseekers.com?
Yes, yes, people can go sign up at thevoiceofjobseekers.com. Fortunately, it's featured in other places as well. It's featured on Inc.'s resources site, and it's also featured on Fast Company's free resources site, so people can even get it from there.
Oh,
But
that's
yeah,
fabulous. That's like, these are the places to, for like a serious writer, Inc., Fast Company, and all those other, blogs that I was talking about earlier. So that's obviously, that shows that there's a demand for what you're saying. Like people want to know, people want to hear, feet on the street, what's going on. And that's fabulous. And I want to rewind a quickly thing, but the thing that you said, you started writing and there was radio silence for quite a bit and then it
Mhm,
took off, right? How long was
mhm.
that radio silence? Do you remember?
It was probably between a year and a half and 2 years, and it could look. I mean, people can find it in different ways, and I didn't make a big announcement about it. It was basically a start because I began to hear something different in writing my advice. Um,
But
I
that's
don't
that's
know
it.
what the
The thing that you said, that is the time, the 1.5 to 2 year mark of writing, or even the first year, when we don't see the traction, that is the time we give up. And that's exactly what you said.
And it
Um,
was very consistent, and I think a lot of people, once a month back then wasn't a lot as opposed to once or twice a week back then. You have a whole lot more content, and especially if you're consistent and you're showing up regularly, people begin to notice, not because you saying something any different than anybody else, but they notice that you're always showing up. So,
yes. And
there's a
you're
few that
you
will take.
I love it. And I interviewed someone for my podcast yesterday. Be so consistent and be so good that you cannot be
Mhm.
ignored anymore.
That's what they say.
So no, that's fabulous. I mean, I could like talk about this for so much longer
Mhm.
because it's fascinating. Everyone's journey is different, and eventually, we do get to our destination, but the way is so squiggly and so different. And I can see we have some comments coming in, and if you're watching us, drop in a comment and say hi. It helps the algorithm. Mark is going to drop some jewels here, and I want to make sure that it reaches as many people as possible. And also give us lots of hearts and applause and likes, not just because Mark is here, but also because it's 7 in the morning for him in Chicago. You know, I'm sure it's you have to be up anyway, but you know it's a bit of an effort, right? Getting ready in the morning
Mhm.
for being live and being seen around the world. So fabulous. So Mark, let's get started. I want to talk about two juicy questions with you today, and they are coming from, and I'm going to link them in the comments. They are coming from two
Mhm.
articles that you've written
Mhm.
some time ago. The first one is related to the difference between good and great. And we talk about this a lot here, and I'm very interested to hear your tips.
Mhm.
And the second thing we're going to talk about is, this one is so interesting, and I'll get into it. The boldness, the audacity, like how dare you ask me for a raise during the pandemic? Because somebody made a comment yesterday in one of my YouTube links. So I'm interested to get started. But let's start with this one.
Okay.
We all think we're really good, Mark. Like, why didn't they get back to me? They're such fools, they don't know what they're
Right.
missing.
Right.
So you have certain thoughts on this. You're pretty good, but you need to be great.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, yeah, that's to stand out these days. Um, when you come into the good category, that means you're doing what everybody else is doing. You're performing it the same way, or you're showing up the same way everybody else is. If you're one of 100 applicants and 100 resumes, and you're looking like everybody else, then you could be good, but it doesn't matter what you think about yourself. It matters what the employer thinks about. So you've got to find out what the employer think is great and achieve that.
yes. And what is it that we need to do then to do that?
Okay, well, there's several things you could do. One is probably get yourself out there and maybe even start writing articles and start tweeting and start writing LinkedIn updates and show up regularly. The more times you show up, the more likely you're able to catch people's eyes. Social media is one of those things where the attention span is very short, and the algorithms are built to be very short because the more thoughts, the better the algorithm is on any platform. LinkedIn is one of the few places where you can capture attention and for it to be shared, and eventually, it can become something, but don't depend on that. Depend on being saying and showing yourself to be extraordinary. That means you've got to start looking at what's good and say, how can I make this great?
Yes.
And a lot of it, if you're coming from a place of wanting to serve and wanting to help, you are way ahead of the pack, because most people are just doing it to either because they're trying to follow somebody's advice, or they're trying to copy what somebody else does, or that they don't know what to do. You're looking and scouting around and you say, how can I add value? How can I be more helpful? And it doesn't matter whether you're more helpful than somebody else. You just take the, look at the land and to see if it's plentiful to harvest. You know what I mean?
Yes, I
And
do
if
know
it
what you
is,
mean. Okay.
if it is, then you put the things that are out there where people say, "Ah, this is exactly what we need," or "This goes along with what we need."
Okay.
So,
I want to get
that's one way.
deeper in this because we could this you know let's go deeper in like the trees, and then there's the
Hmm.
forest. We'll
Right.
go into the trees, but before I do that, I want to say a quick shout out to everyone here. It's nice of you to be here, Mark. We have people here from Finland, India,
Hmm.
the UK, your neighborhood in Chicago, the
Yeah.
Netherlands. Let's see, Pakistan, Hong Kong, more India. If you're watching us, tell us where you're watching us from. It's always fun to see more Hong Kong, Romania. Fabulous, Lisa. I think I don't remember which part of the US you're in, and Mumbai, I think. So great. Techno. Techno fun. We're gonna get to your question, and we have talked about this a lot in some of my previous live streams, but maybe we'll get
Hmm.
Mark's opinion. Mark, I have a follow-up question to that.
Sure.
Start being noticed. That's what you're saying. Use social media to your advantage.
Yes, and
Um,
that's the first way. But
yes.
I think everything has a funnel, so to speak, and most people use funnel in terms of sales,
Yes.
but this is in terms of being noticed, that you're starting with something wide and you want it to shrink. And basically, the connection should work as kind of a funnel. Connections should start as connections, which will turn to relationships, what makes it a little bit smaller, and relationships become possibly referrers in that sense. But when you put out content out there, it's going to be that second tier that people come connections, relationships. People are going to share and start to talk about you and connect with you and relate to you and update you based on the relationship. And the relationships will eventually drive everything else, even if you don't share an update but once or twice a week. At least you're doing something, and you're starting to get out there. But a lot of people don't get past that part, unfortunately. So
Yes. No, I
I think
absolutely
that's where it
love.
gets down.
Yeah, I absolutely love that you said funnels, because anyone who's a small business owner or an entrepreneur, we all know what funnels mean, and it's usually related
Sure.
to capturing leads, right?
Right.
Never ever have I thought of it this way for job search, because you're starting out, you're saying there's this gigantic ocean, and obviously, you narrow things down. Um,
Hmm.
I love it, and so I want to follow up here because you said something interesting. You said write articles, right?
Hmm.
And at the same time, you also said attention span is
Hmm.
really like short today.
Yes.
So between short form blog posts and attention and articles, which one would you say to start with?
I would say start with the short form. But the long form is where you can really build some interesting, you could build stories that people can find a whole lot longer. Updates are okay. People have to go, and follow your timeline in order to find those updates. What I've done in the past, and I still do it from time to time, is that if I'm stuck, I can go back to an update that I've written. I've used I think it was about 2,000 characters or so, and use that as a basis to write an article for my blog, or to put on LinkedIn, do LinkedIn articles, which most people have access to. And it's
Yes.
probably easier that way for people. There's other places where you can put it, but I think those are good places to start. I think people should think big. Think how you can get a free medium.com account and make so that Google can find it even easier than LinkedIn. LinkedIn will be housed mostly to LinkedIn users for the most part. Most people won't get a large enough following or enough reads for the Google Analytics to read. But
Perfect. Yes. Medium.
Medium
Yes.
will
Yes.
be is a great place. Is free, and you can start there, or you can go all the way and do a WordPress press blog, which Google loves WordPress
Yes. Yes.
immensely to this
It
day.
indexes exactly. I want to just quickly share my screen for a second to show what you're talking about, because posts are there and they're
Hmm.
great, but it takes ages to find something. Whereas articles, thank goodness, are actually in one place. So a post is
Yes.
also an article, but an article is not a post. So in the
Yeah.
sense, it's a bit more, um, sort of easy to find. But also what you said, I want to recap that medium and WordPress, it doesn't have to be only someone who's looking at capturing sales business, as a business owner. We've got to put on the
Hmm.
hat of a business owner if we are a job seeker, because that's what we are. We are a business of one.
Yeah.
um, Fabulous. So,
Hmm.
Mark, what else in terms of, one is, of course, social media presence, get seen, get noticed, get people to talk about you. And what else from good to great?
Well, going from good to great, also, that you have, it's okay that you don't start off knowing a whole lot, but you can go from good to great by showing up consistently and showing that, yeah, you are great over time, and that you're showing some growth in your career over time, sharing about how the professional development, how you begin to use that to be useful and meaningful for your career. Maybe if it's not for your career and you're unemployed, there's a lot of creativity these days that's available and tools that are available for you to make it so that people can find it or people can go see what you're talking about. The fact that you can use the same video for LinkedIn, you can also use it for YouTube, and you can also use it for Facebook. And why not put it all over the place so that you could be found? If anything, passively, not even particularly publicly.
I love
Or,
that
or
piece
yeah,
of advice about working smart as opposed to
yeah,
working hard. You can definitely recycle what you have. You have one good idea, you can break it up into five pieces, reformat it for Twitter. And like you said,
hmm
Twitter has its place. Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, and not only think that, oh, it's only businesses that need to attract leads. That's not my job. Social media is extremely underrated for job search. Fabulous. So, what's happening? If you have any questions in the comments, please come in and ask us. We're here for that because I got a couple of questions yesterday, and if we have time, I would love for those people to come in the chat because those were like really long emails, which I'm not going to
hmm
be able to summarize without
right,
looking at them, and then I don't want to break anybody's privacy. And
right.
in the meantime, yeah, I mean, we've got a few folks here from your neck of the woods as well. Arizona, Gavin, I think you're in the UK. Tunisia, Texas. Fabulous. So, Mark, let's talk about this. And I'm fascinated about asking for a raise when times are hard.
hmm
And someone commented when I put up this post, I don't know, I don't remember where, they said, this is extremely tricky. You would either have to be pretty bold or pretty crazy to ask for a raise in these times. And I'm like,
It
it
depends.
depends.
It depends because if you're working for a company that, of course, um, that isn't doing well and has made it public, and that there are layoffs going on, of course, that's not the place where you want to ask for a raise. It's a matter of being able to hearing what the noise is, even though they may not talk about business. If they've done some hiring and they're about to do some more hiring, then it's possible you could do a raise. So on this particular piece that I wrote, I think it was a few months ago, I did some reporting and I reached out to a couple of negotiator experts that were able to comment, people who have had a lot of experience in negotiating.
Yes.
And one of the things that was said was that you're kind of reading the tea leaves and kind of taking the temperature of the room, in the sense of, if you know that it's warm, that you're not going to ask for a blanket, you're going to ask for a cup of water. That's more than likely. So, there's a difference there. If you know that there's not hiring going on, and that the atmosphere is kind of strict and it's kind of cold and it's not as inviting, it's unlikely that you're going to ask for. It's not going to be prime time to ask for a raise, unless you understand the language that's being spoken in some of the some of the things that are going on. It might be that company might be trying to sell the company. So I've done this personally, where I was in a situation, not to give away all
Hmm.
the confidentiality that was
Hmm.
involved there, but this company and me working with this company, they were looking to sell the company. So I felt,
But did
in
you
what I
know
was
that?
hearing, I knew that, and it was made public to the workers.
Okay.
It was a smaller startup, so it wasn't like like there wasn't too many places to hide, right? So I went and I asked, uh, based on that. they were starting to make some things kind of fun. Like they would say, "Hey, if we can meet our goal on this day, you'll get a $300 bonus for that day, and I'll pay it out in cash," or those kind of stuff. So it was even before that. I knew that they were going to sell the company, but I knew too that they were starting to not hire other people, and other people start to leave. So I knew there was a little bit more
Ah,
money.
ah,
So I asked the first time, and the first time it was like it wasn't a yes or a no. There were some contingencies that were involved. I said, well, then maybe that wouldn't be a good thing. I'm not interested in following those kind of contingencies. But then he came back and said, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and give it to you, because it was, say, hey, there's no strings attached. You'll see it in your next check. The difference is that I didn't try to make it a thing where it was pressure or
yeah,
that you had to give it or else. It
yes,
was it was actually a pretty good relationship there, and he knew too that I gave value in my work.
sure.
So I felt very confident that I had the leverage ultimately to be able to do it and to make that happen. And I think that in the same sense, you've got to look and examine very closely and ask yourself, do you have the leverage in your situation? If you have performance issues, that's not a good time to ask for a raise.
No, of course
Or
not.
if you know that there are more layoffs to come, that isn't a good time to ask for a raise. So
Yeah,
you got it is a risk
yes,
involved, and it's not an automatic and a systematic thing that you can do, but you do have to be tactful and respectful.
yes,
If they feel like you're asking, if you're asking, too much, then that can sever the relationship in a very slow and very painful way.
sure, sure.
So you
So,
have to be
so that's a
smart.
good point. Okay, fabulous. I'm actually taking notes. even though, even though
Cool.
I can watch the live stream again as a replay, and I see that we have
Cool.
a bunch of questions, and I promise I'm going to get to your questions as soon
Okay.
as we address this topic. But I want to recap what you said. Timing is everything. If you see that there might be a sale going on where the company might be in, that means there might be some waterfall cash,
Hmm.
and it might be a, like when we say, strike when the iron is hot. So it depends on so many factors, right? You have to
Hmm.
make sure you have leverage, which means you are so good at what you do. And another thing which is very interesting, and Sonia is watching. Hi, Sonia, because she's in Melbourne, so it's middle of the night for her. So I'm like, I want to
Oh,
acknowledge that.
wow.
If your line of work is, yes, Sonia, which I know it is in your case, so it definitely helps, particularly when
Hmm.
demand exceeds
The
supply, for
supply,
sure.
right?
And I love that you said that, and I say the same thing all the time. Ask, but ask nicely. It's just like we tell children. And if you're going to throw a tantrum, we tell the kid, you go to the corner, like, think about what you did, like,
Right.
time out. And that's the thing that you said. There is a risk. And the biggest risk is, of course, that there are cracks in the relationship, which cannot be, it's not the same after you
Yeah.
see those cracks in the vase, because they feel maybe you took advantage or whatever.
Right.
And another thing I want to say is, if you don't ask, the answer is always no anyway.
Right. And I think people, because if there are cracks, as you mentioned, in the relationship, that's the worst time to find out that crack is that hairline fracture has now become a hole, so to speak. So
Yeah. Yeah.
you don't want to find out at that particular time if you have a doubt. And I think it's good to ask questions about what you see and hear, but you have to be savvy, um, you know savvy but not deceitful. And I think what I mean is if you're hearing that they're doing some hiring, they might just be hiring some contract for a very short period of time. That doesn't mean that they're doing well, or that they can't keep up with the demand of business and the hiring. That's a clue, and that's very useful intel. So
Yes.
it is very important to know the difference between the two and to ask in a way where it invites, it's not the final, it's not an ultimatum, and that you ask in a way that where if they say no, it's a thoughtful no, and you leave room to come back. And
Yes.
I don't think it's necessarily good for you to say, "Can we talk about it later?" After a no is given, you could talk about it later. If somebody says, "Well, give me some time to think about it," then revisit it, but be thoughtful in the way that you revisit it and look for the best times to do that. But
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's tricky to navigate, but it's possible to now navigate.
It's tricky, but it's definitely possible. And
Mhm.
the other thing is, what do you do if they say no? So what you're saying is just kind of leave the door open for
If
another
it's
day.
a no, not yet, as opposed to no,
No, never.
or well, nobody won't say no, never, but say no, it's
It's
not
not possible.
possible
Mhm.
uh, because of X, Y, and Z. That could be, they can leave some very useful intel there, because that's what no is, according to, uh, uh, my friend Kwame Christian, who's an expert negotiator here in the U.S.
Can you spell out his name, please, Mark?
Sure, it's Kwame, Kwame, and then the word Christian. And you can find him on LinkedIn. Tell my shouted
I
him out.
will. I will definitely
But
do that. But I'm also
but
writing his name down for people who might be interested in checking out his work. We have
yeah,
a very intelligent and hungry audience who always want to keep up to date with everything going on. Is that how you spell it?
yes,
Okay, perfect. Check out Kwame's work and shout out to Kwame if he's watching
yeah.
the replay. Fabulous. So there is a way to do it. We just talked about when to ask for a raise, when to not ask for a raise, how to go about it, and what if they say no. When it comes to how to go about it, you mentioned ask nicely, don't give that ultimatum. Check
Mhm.
out. We talked about the timing, etc. And when it comes to how to go about it, any other tips you want to share with us, Mark?
Sure. Some people are, most of the time, the best time to ask for a raise, of course, the structured time is performance reviews, right?
Yes.
When people are expecting a raise, or they're not expecting a raise, or maybe they were put off, said we can't give a raise now, but we're looking to later on. Those are prime time usually. Uh, the time where there may need to be a little disruption is if there is an sort of an opportunity where the environment's a little lighter, there's some levity, there has been a surge of business, and where you may have even performed in an outstanding way. You definitely own it at that particular time, where you were the difference maker. And it doesn't have to even be said. Say, hey, if you've had this great relationship with the boss, as opposed to a bad relationship, that makes all the difference in the world too. If there's constant communication, and maybe there's ways that you may have even prepped your boss uh, for that big ask, that's a great way to that's a great time to ask. If you've never prepped your boss and you come out of the blue, not a great idea
No, no,
to
it's
drop a surprise.
yeah.
But if it's something like you've talked about, great performance, great performance, great performance, and if you can even get your boss's boss to buy in,
Yes,
I mean, to at least prime them, and them giving you positive feedback, you've got leverage.
you got
You've
left.
got
I
you
love it. And I
you've
talk
got
about this with my clients all the time
yeah,
because there is so much focus, Mark, on the boss. And I'm
yeah,
like, don't forget the champion. Don't forget the champion. And that guy or girl holds a lot of puppet strings in terms of what's going on and decision
right,
making. And there's no harm once in a while catch up, coffee, lunch.
Mhm.
And in fact, in some companies, they institutionalize it. I worked at GE, and these used to be called skip level meetings. And it was
Mm.
encouraged for visibility and perception management.
But
So,
that's the way people should approach it and should think about their careers
exactly.
internally. You know, the way that you make and break yourself very often is not just contingent on your direct boss, but your boss's boss, sometimes even your boss's boss's boss.
Yes, and that could
And
be the
it
big shot CEO, which is absolutely fine because
right.
relationships is everything.
Relationships is everything, and upward relationships mean a whole lot
Yes,
more when it comes to your future or whether you're going to have a future.
whether
But
you're going to have a future,
if
exactly.
it's
And
broken,
yeah,
if it's broken at the top, and you don't see them being approachable, it's not going to work too much locally with your direct boss because he's facing some of the same things and same challenges, questions that you have. So you're likely not going to get something that he's not getting or she's not getting.
exactly. And
Um,
then it becomes this pity party, which you don't want to be a part of. You don't want to be invited there. So,
Well, you don't want any part of that. So you might want to say, maybe I just need to move on is a better move and to
yes.
get the raise that way because standard practice for the most part, 15 to 20% a raise is expected to get when you change a job, even if it's in the same level position, you'll likely get 15, 20%. So that's better than the 2% that you're likely to get because of the
Year on year.
pandemic.
Got it. Got it.
So you know you got to weigh that, and if you're too comfortable, uh, with a company, you don't go anywhere, then don't regret not having to ask or not having to start to make moves because
Yeah.
then you put yourself in that position,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes perfect sense. I'm so glad we spent a lot of time on this because this is so worth it. And that
Okay.
extra bit of money, Mark, that we're talking about, that you're helping us with, that extra bit
Hmm.
of money, which is compounded over a period of time, is potentially life changing. And
Hmm.
why should you not ask for it, right? So
Right.
fabulous. So we have a bunch of questions that have come in, Mark, which I'm gonna
Okay.
take with you. I'd love your thoughts on them. Hi Abhishek, I think you're new here. I answer all the questions that come in as much as I can. We're gonna start with CC. So CC, thanks for hanging around. I know you've been patient. Should you tell your manager that you're going for an interview, or tell them after you've been offered a job? What do you think, Mark?
Most people are not going to tell the manager before they have an interview. Most people are going to go interview. I've been in situations where um, I've had the whole team of people I worked for. I had my boss and my boss's boss be on my team to make the next step because the company we were with, they weren't able to hire me on to take on that role or take on a bigger role. They saw that I could, so therefore they kind of got on team. In fact, all my references came from that one job and from that team. So that's a rare
Yeah.
opportunity that doesn't happen normally. I would say play your cards very close,
Yeah.
and be discretion.
Very
Use a
discreet.
lot of
Very
discretion.
discreet. Yeah.
Use a lot of discretion when you're
Yeah.
making moves. Make them very quietly. I would even say don't even tell your coworkers
No.
um, in making your moves these days. I will also caution as well is to understand, depending on your industry, that people in management are connected to other people in management. So you've got to be sure that there's confidentiality with the people that you're also interviewing with, because these days people talk
Of
and
course.
people talk and people are even closer connected in the professional world because of LinkedIn and other social networks. So I would say make those moves very quietly and discreetly, and only tell once you've got an offer and you've said yes.
Exactly.
Um,
There's
so,
there's pen on paper. I absolutely agree with you. CC, the only time I would tell my boss is when the boss knows because the company is shutting down. There is no other way you can have that type of relationship unless it's rare that you know that there is no future in the company. You've reached the ceiling and your boss knows, and the boss is like, my hands are tied. But if they're good leaders, they'll find a way to make you stay. They'll give you challenges, give you opportunities
Yeah. But there might be times too where that boss is also is in the environment themselves and they want to
where
move
they
up
are
and not
looking.
able to. And
It
therefore
happens.
that and sometimes people who have are like minded recognize, say, hey, I can help this person at least with giving a reference and pointing the right direction, even being a mentor, which happened to me several times throughout my career, where I was able to they became mentors and became great mentors and took me to the next level
Yeah,
of where I was at. So look out for those relationships, but overall be respectful
yeah.
in all situations. Be tactful even when you tell
Yeah.
that it's time for you to go.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
you have
Because
to
for
take
then
some
you
time.
need to put yourself in the shoes of the boss. How would you handle it if you were in his or her shoes, right? And CC, I want
Yes.
to talk about one thing as well, which Mark said, and I want to repeat it. Be very careful about who you trust. Work colleagues can become really close friends, but at that point of time, you want to keep your cards really close to your chest. And even LinkedIn, like I've had clients who have worked with me and they are actively looking for a job, but they are also employed. And I'm like, take your time. The profile picture, the banner, your entire, it doesn't have to happen in like, don't update everything in 24 hours. People are like, ooh, you're going somewhere? Like, hey, what's going on? So be careful.
I would even add to that. People, it's interesting. You could almost tell when a lot of people do so, because you know how the office is and everybody's friendly. But then when you start being quiet and you start taking time away and you don't explain that, then it becomes suspect. But
Yeah.
if you're always like to yourself, then people expect that and respect that. So you've got to think and move within the MO of what you've actually put out there. If you're all of a sudden quiet and there's something going on, you're just going on longer lunches, 2 or 3 times a month, you're going to be suspect. Everybody's going to know,
Yeah.
but you still want to keep it close to your chest, and
Yeah.
you just
Yeah.
realize that you've also because of your change of behavior, the environment's now different.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree with you. So hopefully, CC, that helps you. And we're going to get moving because our questions are actually we're getting more and more. So Ariane is
Okay.
asking, how do you search for a job in a different industry if you don't have any experience in that industry? So before I ask Mark to answer, Ariane, I'm going to also tell you to check out a video I have, like a longish video on my YouTube channel where I talk about this in detail. But Mark, what is your favorite tip to tell someone? Because this happens a lot, not just during the best of times, but even during a recession.
Yeah, and I'll have to preface it because there's two different views. One is that you're already out of a job and that you want to change industries. That becomes a totally different animal,
Yeah,
as opposed to you having a job
yeah,
and you can
leverage.
control
Yes,
the leverage part,
yes,
or yet you have a parachute already, landing already made for you. That if you're changing with already having a job, then you can do the professional development of whatever it takes to get into that industry. Changing industries are tough when you don't have experience in that industry. So you'll have to go out and figure and be creative in how you'll get it. There's always, of course, joining some of those associations that industry considers prime to join. Start looking for if you need to have extra classes or some kind of development. Go through that. Look for volunteer opportunities. That's a great way to change
that's my
careers,
favorite because you show
and
it. You show
and
it.
and and you can even choose when you volunteer, you can choose the times and how long you do it and for the length of time. And what you want to start doing is building proof that you can actually do the job if you
Exactly.
require the training. And then you even exchange the equity of having a reference for doing that job instead of pay. Or volunteer means pretty much you're trying to get the experience. So that's going to be the great equalizer, that you've done a great job
Yeah.
and it's good enough for them to write a LinkedIn recommendation or be
Yes.
that reference that they need. And you may need to build anywhere from 3 to 7 references to show that you've done that job, or that you can perform at that level that company needs. But you want to also be very targeted in your search, not just look at an industry and see what the industry is. Find out what companies are like, and different companies are like, and and start to choose to look at certain companies and start to target those as a way. Find out what's in those environments. Sometimes you may not need extra education. They may just have you might have the right kind of experience. There's others that might need some extensive experience, so it might be a bit of time. But unfortunately, there's no magic elixir, but those are the basics of people wanting to change
Exactly. And also see
industries.
your transferable skills, just like Sonia is saying, because those are your
Hmm.
best friends. And
Yes.
uh, combining with what Mark said, and I put that in my video, Ariani, so definitely check it out. Um, there was a survey done a few years ago of hiring managers on LinkedIn, and 41% consider volunteer experience at the same level as paid
Hmm.
experience. So definitely take
Yep.
advantage of it. And the word I love that Mark used is proof, because that gives you proof that you can do it. You didn't just do a course like everyone else. You didn't just do a certification, which is a lot of times online, let's face it, but you can also manage the stress and the people and the work
Hmm.
tasks that come with volunteer. Is not like, oh, it's easy just because it's free. You can be so organized that they fall in love with you and they're like, I will give you a recommendation on LinkedIn. And that recommendation means a lot. And they're not going to say she did this to, for free. They don't care.
Hmm.
If it's a job well done, it's job well done, right?
Right, especially when
So
other people find it useful, and that they've actually gained profit in some kind of way, whether you save time, or it made money, or it saved them a whole lot of work. Those things matter in the workplace. All three are transferable in that kind of way to any industry.
exactly. So you're doing a master's in it, Ariani. So that's fabulous. So good luck with that. And Nikhil's saying, any fun or easy way to boost interpersonal skills? Because that's the holy grail, isn't it, Mark? Interpersonal.
Those are your transferable skills, or those soft skills and the way you relate to people. um, I would say the fun tip that I would give is something that we're doing now, is start applying to a live stream and do a live stream. Or even quicker, there are apps now these days where you can start a podcast today and have it up tonight,
Yeah.
and just have a conversation with people. And it doesn't even you don't even have to have a plan or a strategy, so to speak. You could just do it to get something up online so that people can start to see. So, okay, show some personality, have some fun, but at the same time, solve a problem, be useful, try to be meaningful, be
Yeah.
inspiring, make people laugh, cry, make people, think, um, you know, cause them to go a little bit deeper, and that's value. And
Yeah.
it's a
And
very powerful thing that can come across well to an employer, or somebody who might want to refer you because they like your personality.
yeah, and I want to add to that. This is the first thing that we were talking about, is how to stand out and how to go from good to great. This could be one way to do from good to great, because there's not many people who are doing podcasts who are actively looking for a job. It's, you
Hmm.
can say it's a crazy idea. What have you got to lose? And it's like there's no money involved. It's actually free if you put it on Anchor and you're using your phone to record. You don't have to have fancy
That's right.
microphone like Mark has right now. You don't need all of that stuff. But focus on solving a problem. You're not just faffing around, mucking about, wasting people's time. But you have specific things to say, and you're like, "Can I interview you? I have a podcast."
Mhm.
Okay, and then they remembered, like, oh, this job came up, and yeah, I remember Nikhil knows Java. Oh yeah, he's done a few projects. Like, oh, okay, interesting. And then connect the dots. So you
You
ask a
can
fun question, you get a fun answer.
Yeah, and I think even like I said, a live stream is great to
Yes.
do if you can get the permission. Now, if you're not active on LinkedIn, you're likely not to get anything. But
Yes.
if you are, if you're consistently showing up, and I think you should do that anyway, regardless,
Yes.
you can stand out and have some very meaningful conversations, and even people you learn from and people might be where you are to say, I want to interview, is unlikely that they'll say no.
Exactly. And we forget when we are actively looking for a job, we forget, we think it's so lonely and woe is me. Have a conversation. Sometimes it's have a conversation and it can
Yep.
be live, it can be on a podcast, it can be with anyone practically that you think is
Hmm.
interesting to speak with. So, fabulous. It seems Abhishek has a two-part question and he's going through
Okay.
something. So, Abhishek, we're
All
going to
right.
do our best to help you. Okay, ma'am,
All right.
I was not getting recognition in my current organization, so I went for some interviews, and now I have start offers starting from 40% hike to 180% hike. Wow, congrats, Abhishek. I'm confused who to select. I already resigned from my current organization, and this is the 18th month, and I have to go at least with one offer. What do you think I should do before we? Okay, gosh, Abhishek, firstly, can I just say this is a good problem to have? Okay. In the
It's an excellent problem to
It's
have.
especially in the current scenario, this is an excellent problem to have. Before we get to Mark and ask for his opinions, I do want to say we or anybody else should not be telling you what to do. It's a very tricky thing, it's very personal. You got to figure out what matters to you, make a list of pros and cons, but think about your future. And please don't ask this question to total strangers. You can ask for a point of view, but don't say what do you think I should do, because you're outsourcing that entire decision to someone else. But it's so important, like it's your future, right? So having said that, I wanted to give that disclaimer. Mark, what do you think about what Abhishek is going through?
It's a good problem to have. I probably wouldn't have resigned without making a decision.
Hmm.
Even
Hmm.
though you've got five offers, you can never take for granted what could happen in between the time you accept that offer and the time
Yes.
that you start. I've seen people have two or three offers and end up not taking either one because two of the companies went under and one company wasn't as good as you thought as it was.
Or you
So
get
I
to,
would say,
Mark, it happens sometimes your intuition is like something is weird about the vibe, like people,
yes,
you know what I
yes.
mean? And you're like, no, 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 but the money is so good. Don't ignore your intuition.
Yeah. And going completely off of money, I mean, I understand 180% hike is doubling plus your salary. So, I get that, but at the same time, money isn't everything. So, having said that, being that we're only going off on money, because that's really the only intel that we really have. We don't know
Yeah.
if you're
Yeah.
really crazy about a company. It doesn't sound like you have any emotional attachment to whoever you're interviewing with. You're just going for the money. My question is, why haven't you gone for the highest bidder? That would ultimately would find out if you really have any emotional investment in it or not. Because if it is, then you put yourself in a transactional situation,
Yes,
which could
exactly.
break
So,
which you
yeah.
could break at any point, or they can break at any point.
Exactly. So,
Uh,
Abhishek, that's what you're saying. Which one should you select? Put all of those factors together. You've only shared money with us, but put all those other factors in a Excel sheet. Pros and cons with everything. But I would say the future. Which one looks like it's going to give you the brightest future, even if it's for 2 years or 3 years.
Well, I would even go further that which one, as you talked about earlier, which one matches your values, because the ones that you want to think that you want to enjoy your work and to have some kind of, you want to be motivated every day to go. You don't want to have that part broken, but you didn't mention that. So it's kind of hard to
Hmm.
say. So
Yeah,
really,
yeah.
we
It's not
can't
a
answer it we can't
yeah,
answer fairly without
yeah.
having more information.
Exactly. It's
So
a good question, Abhishek, on an open platform. It's not a
it's a
problem,
it's
but
a good question, but it's a question, again, I would ask, why aren't you taking the one with 180% hike.
Exactly.
That
If
should
you
be an
if
automatic if that's really it. So it
and
makes
listen
me
to your intuition, because if you haven't taken the one which is 180% hike, then it means something is bothering you about it. So think about why, and why is it that you're asking on a YouTube live stream. Something about it is bothering you. So listen to your intuition, go for the one which you think will help you get, closer to your future
yeah, good luck
dreams,
to
your
you.
destiny. Money will
Yeah.
come. I always think when you enjoy what you do and you're very good at what you do, money will come. But I don't think like chasing money is always the solution. So again,
I
it's a
think
very personal decision.
money's far secondary when it comes to your career. I mean, there's so many things dependent on what you're going to choose. But I don't know. Later in my years, the meaning means a whole lot more than the money.
Exactly.
That's why I do
Purpose.
what I do.
Yes.
There's better paying things to do what I do right now. But having said that, there's so much freedom. I decide the direction my company goes because I am my company, and I decide who I like to talk to and who I don't want to talk to, and the relationships and all that. Those things are irreplaceable,
Yeah.
as opposed to money is replaceable.
Exactly,
Depending
exactly. And
upon how much you want to
you
spend
can
control
buy,
at.
money can buy some things, money can't buy everything. So
That's right.
it's a good point. But at the end of the day, it's very personal. So, ultimately you got to do something and you got to do what feels right to you. And we wish
Right.
you success. Cool. So, Mark, it might happen that in case there's a possibility, because the questions aren't stopping, but at some point I'm going to stop them. But it might happen that we go a little bit over the hour. Is that okay with you?
We can go as long as you want.
You're amazing. Can we get lots of hearts? Can we get lots of hearts and lots of likes for Mark, please? Like, that is the least we can do to show our appreciation. Hey, Amitesh, can you please tell us what? Can you please tell what if my candidature is rejected based on the notice period of my current job? Candidature is rejected. Oh, you mean to say you have a longish notice period and they can't wait for you, so they rejected you? I've actually never heard that happen. Mark, what do you
Well,
think?
that's very interesting. I had an experience where I was working a job that wasn't working out because the relationship with my boss. Um, it just happened so that I had a better relationship with my boss's boss. So when my boss wanted to, you know, pretty much get rid of me, and I said, "Well, I can offer you my resignation." And so apparently she was told in the interim she would rather me go after 2 weeks. Well, I ended up having an 8 week period from the time that I resigned to the time I actually left, mostly because I had a good reputation everywhere else except the boss. So that's the way I see it. I don't know if it actually happened that way, but it was very unusual for it to have that long of time. So it depends on your relationships. And really, most of the time these days, usually if they you have a 2 week time, or if you're at will, you can leave right away.
Yeah, but
So
at will is not that common here, right? And also
yeah,
in Europe, actually, sometimes it's common for it to be 3 months from the
interesting.
time that you resign.
So there's the different dynamic here is if it's reject based on the period of my current job. So let me switch speeds here. He's talking about he has an offer, I guess,
Yes.
and he's at his old job and he hasn't given them the time. You should be communicating and should know that information. If you're asking this question, you haven't talked to them a while, you might be jeopardizing your opportunity. So I would say you need to go have some conversations with them, and then barely let your company know what your plans are,
Yeah.
if you've accepted this offer.
Yeah.
So they can change your mind if you're not in touch with them, especially if they've been trying to get in touch with them, you've been putting them off, then that could be it could be catastrophic.
Exactly. And I think it might be, I mean, I would say don't worry too much. At the end of the day, everything is fixable, right? So, but if,
Hmm.
if somebody rejects you because they can't wait for you, what is it telling you? You don't have to answer it to us right now, but it's telling you something about a culture which is very focused on speed.
Yes.
I would want you to think about it. Our work, our job is not a joke. It's serious. We spend more time there than we do at home. Like, what did they say in Indiana Jones? Choose wisely. Which company?
Right.
Choose wisely. You're going to have options, Abhishek, with 5 options. Choose wisely. I'm not saying that you've
Right.
stuck with it once you choose it, but it's harder, right? It's harder than, you don't want to come across as someone who's hopping around. And
Hmm.
speaking of hopping around, I want to get to you with another question. It's a perfect
Sure.
segue. It's a perfect segue. Sandesh is saying, we have a lot of Indians here, so I'm really happy to see that. How does one explain multiple job changes in one professional career in consulting roles? Because it's very common, right, Mark, in consulting to
Hmm.
move around wherever your skills are
Yes.
demand.
Yes. Absolutely. And you could explain these were consulting roles. When the role was over and you're done, you signed a contract for 6 months. After 6 months, it was done. Then you went on to the next contract. You don't have to give these
Not,
days.
I'm
It's
guessing sometimes it's not the closed-ended one, right? Sometimes it could be you've done it for 1 year or 2 years and then
for per
open-ended.
example.
Hmm.
But even if it was 6 months, and let's say you changed 4 times in the last 2 years, that's okay. If you have, that's showing that you have stayed in demand, and that you're creating work that people are demanding from you and want from you, that's a plus. What you have to find out is and decide for yourself, or is the next job going to be something permanent, or is going to be just another 6 month hop or a year hop, and just be forthright with it. Now, you don't have to say how long you plan to stay, but you do have to convince them that you are here to get the job done and whatever else comes along, if that's really what you want. So, but it won't work against you as far as being hired. But, these days people aren't worried about if it's a consulting role. I might be concerned if it was a permanent role with benefits, that maybe if you've hopped around, that might be a little more concern.
I
But I
think
think
that's where
these
it
days
is.
it's less concern.
I think that's where it is, and which is probably where the question is coming from. And Sandesh, it's exactly, I think, what Mark said, and I want to add to it. You better have solid reasons. If that is the case, you better have solid reasons about something. Whatever the reasons are, be honest. But if it's every single time, and this is pure honesty from us as well, we're not
Hmm.
going to BS you around, we're not going to muck you about. If every single time you made changes because you wanted to have more growth and more money, put yourself in the shoes of the recruiting person or the hiring manager. Like, what are they going to think by the time they see you as completely productive and they have seen some ROI from you? It's 12 months, usually 12 to 18 months. And if you have a history, we don't know, we're assuming, if you have a history of leaving around 1 to 2 years time, where are they going to see return on investment with you, right? So they would think before hiring you. So you appear like a risky candidate. So you want to make sure your reasons are rock solid so you can
Yeah.
explain
And,
them.
and I think too, if you have references from all of those places saying that you did a great job, that means you ended in an amicable way.
On a
And
good note.
therefore it shows that, hey, you did it until it was done. They were happy and then you departed. That makes a difference than you left in the middle of those projects and nobody would speak for you. Then that would be suspect.
Yeah, exactly. So perfect. I hope that helps you, Sandesh. And I see we have two more questions, and then I'm going to sign off because it's not fair.
Okay.
We're taking so much
Okay.
advantage of Mark's generosity. Payal, I see your question, sweetheart. I will come to you in a minute. I want to talk to Ridwan for a second because I see there's a conversation going on. If you have
Mhm.
more than 20 years experience and you lost your job and you've been unemployed for 8 months, which is hello, welcome to the club, which is true for
Yeah.
many of us. And now you're getting a job which is much below your previous position and it will impact your resume. Should I take the offer to stop the increasing gap or wait for the right position according to experience and expertise? And I see that we have an answer in here. It's lovely when people help each other out, right?
Hmm.
Um, and Gavin says, hey, hold on if you still can. Once you kind of blemish your CV, it's a little bit more challenging to get back to your previous level that you were at? And Gavin, appreciate your point of view. What do you think, Mark?
Um, a bridge job can be a blessing or a curse, and what I mean is that it may take longer for a job that you don't care much about, but you got to pay the bills in some kind of way, right? So you have to kind of choose if you're going to take a bridge job, that you're going to do it until that next job comes along. But if you're not getting, if that bridge job is something that is equal to what you have, then you might be able to leverage that. In a sense, if it's something where you're being underemployed, then that can be as bad as being unemployed,
Yeah.
because you're doing something you don't like and you're not making quite the money. You're not able to pay everything, but you're paying something. I mean, there's a lot of thoughts on that, and it depends what you're going to value at this particular time. If it's giving you some experience that you need and you're underemployed, you can leverage that.
Yeah.
But if it's
Yeah.
something that you didn't say whether it was grossly underpaying or not, but I think if depending on the economy or where you're at, you know, it might be. I would say it only be worth the wait
Yeah.
if you've got something on the horizon. If you don't have anything on the horizon, you're talking about possibly another 2, 3, 4 months before something would actually come up. The interview
Exactly.
process here in America, some companies are going through 8 to 10 rounds of interviewing, and that's not including the final round. So
It's
that could
common,
take
Mark, outside the
that
US as well. It's very
that
common to keep it long.
that could take 4 to 6 weeks or longer. Do you really want to wait that out just to see and take it? That's a risk. That's not a risk that you can mitigate after you've turned down an opportunity. So you've got a lot of factors to weigh out. If you take the job where you're underemployed, at least you're starting to do something, and
Right.
maybe you
Right.
can do some other things to leverage. Other
Right.
than that, you're taking a risk that you may not get anything else for a long time.
It's
So
it's so tricky,
it's
right,
hard to say.
Ridwan and Mark? It's damned if you do and damned if you don't.
Right.
And bridge jobs are not easy, but I love it. You can either look at it as a blessing or a curse. It can be a blessing because it helps to take care of you and your family. Let's face it, most of us have run out of savings. How much can you deep dive into your savings and your unemployment
After
benefit?
8 months. After
It
eight
dries
months. That's
out.
a
The well
long
dries out. So
that's a
you
long
some
time.
exactly, and sometimes you got to do what you got to do. And I would add to that because I remember Sarah Johnston, and I'm going to tag her. She had a post on this a few months ago, and it went crazy viral, and people had some really
Mhm.
strong views. I was like, at the end of the day, you're not going to lead with this for the next job, right? This was something you took to pay bills. We understand that. So I want to ask Jack Kelly. No, Jack, I'm not stealing Mark from you. He is all
Hey,
yours. And
Jack.
I will leave you guys and you can do your bromance later. But Jack,
Yeah.
I want to ask you, I hope you're watching, as a recruiter, because you see a lot of stuff happening in the market. As a recruiter, if you can tell us about Ridwan's query, and particularly the fact that, hey, Ridwan, you're in Saudi Arabia, which is a land of opportunity, right? Because of oil. Would you reject a candidate or have two thoughts about this person if they have taken a job which is a little bit unrelated, or at a lower level than what they had? Interested to hear your point of view, Jack. So if you have a few
And
seconds,
if I could,
tell us what you think.
if I could add something here too, is that what's great situations that I've seen over the pandemic, since we've been in the pandemic, people taking their side gigs to another level, and to me, it seems like the side gig is really the job now. And I've seen people where they've gotten the side gig to where that if they take a job, it would be a step back because it was because it was reaping so much more than the regular job that they have. And when you don't have anything, you've got something that's great. But it really is a great experience when you have a side gig or you have a business, or that if you do have something something where you can amount enough experience and education that's useful to a company, you have choices then. So, it would be the actual business can be your experience now. And you can even use the advantages that the government's even here giving with the different types of loans to really make to advance that
Good,
even further.
good. So Ridwan, we have
So
proof, right? We have at least one recruiter who agrees with us. Under
right,
these
not during these
circumstances,
circumstances. Right.
exactly, under extenuating circumstances, I like the use of the word. Recruiters understand this. Job seekers need to do what they need to do. And if recruiters slash hiring managers have two thoughts about you, honestly, listen, buddy, times are going to change. We can smell
Yes.
it. Jack mentioned it in a comment to me some time ago.
Right.
Things are changing, things are opening up. You're going to have choices, you're going to have your pick. It reminds me of do you remember Julia Roberts in Pretty Woman? And they're like, we will not serve you, and we don't talk to people like you. And she's like, get lost, I'm going to go and I'm going to do better.
That's so interesting that you bring that up. But I think the difference in the modern job search today, people have an opportunity. To me, I think of the other Julia Roberts movie, My Best Friend's Wedding. I don't know if you
Yes,
remember the scene where Cameron Diaz's character is upset that her about to be husband was starting to look at, or it was perceived that she was
yes,
interested
yeah,
in Julia Roberts, so
yes,
she starts to run away, and Dylan's character starts to chase her, and Julia Roberts' character starts to chase him.
yes,
Now,
I remember that scene, and they're looking at her and she's like, ah, she's from New York.
right, right. But in that chase, when Julia didn't catch up or whatever, she went back and talked to her friend and says, "Do you realize what went on there? Uh, You know, she was running away from him. He was running away from Julia to run to her. But
Yes,
who's chasing you?"
who's chasing
And
you?
the idea of the modern job search is to get somebody to chase you. It's
Yes,
not just for you to be the one to chase. You want other people to chase you. You can't do that if you're not creating a demand for your work. You're not able to do that, and your ability, if you're not doing anything. You got to start doing some things, show your work, and start to prove that you can do those jobs before another job even becomes an issue for you, that
yep,
it's already out there, so you can create demand for your work by doing the work even before
correct.
even considering who's going to hire you.
Beautiful. You've given us something to think about. Who's chasing you? Because
Yes.
you need to take a little bit control of your career. And Jack has some amazing news for particularly folks in the US. Employment rose in February by 379,000 jobs compared to, yeah, January was depressing and a lot of jobs had been lost, in fact. So,
Hmm.
um, good. So Ridwan, I see you have a follow-up question. We'll come back to you. I want to say quick shout out, Mayur. You've got this. You've got this. It's not an easy time. You're being
Hmm.
tested.
Yeah.
It's around the corner, but you've got to put your head down and do the work. And don't apply only. Like,
Don't
don't
give up.
just do that, right?
Yeah. Don't give up.
Don't give up.
Um, I, I was told someone applied to 700 jobs and hadn't received an interview, and they eventually got a job. They just recently got a job. So the 73, that's tough. People are going through tough times, but we're resilient. We all are. We all
Yes.
have that spirit of resilience. You've just got to hang around the people who are like-minded, that aren't giving up, and maybe if you're around people who are giving up, maybe you need to leave them alone for a little bit and be around those who are applying grit
Who's
and
chasing you?
starting
Yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
starting to forge forward.
Yeah, and I want to say something here, which I think might be a little controversial, and Jack knows what I'm talking about. Jack had an article published in Forbes a few months ago, and this woman talked about how she'd applied to, I don't know, a number like this, what you said, 500 jobs or something like that. Don't get me wrong, I don't want to appear heartless here, but I think sometimes some people wear this number like a badge of honor. And you got to be a little smarter about it and applying and
Hmm.
thinking you've done your job and that's it. And I've done that for straight 8 hours. You do that, but you also do other things, like Mark said. Look active on social, start creating things from scratch, articles, content, start conversations that Mark said, have a podcast. It doesn't take a lot of, or be invited to podcasts, be invited to live streams, have those networking conversations. Then you have a bit more control as opposed to just applying, because when you're applying it's one-sided and it's hope, and hope is not a strategy.
No, no, hope is not a useful strategy
No.
uh, at all. So,
No, exactly.
I've seen, and I could think of a friend of mine that actually, after he finished his master's degree, he didn't get job offers right away. So what he did was he started creating things on YouTube, and that was, even though it's almost completely different from what he does now. Well, I shouldn't say completely different, because it had to do with computers, and he went on to do much bigger things now, to the point to where he had a job reference from Michael Dell. That's a long story from we talk about Dell computers, but
Yeah.
whole nother that's a whole nother thing. But he started out you know, trying to show some acumen by, taking apart computers and putting them together. And he would talk people through it and talk how
Yeah.
what his thinking was and everything. Do something to show that you can do the work, that you have a thought process and you have a strategy, and that you're able to even adapt to what they're doing.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Exactly.
it's not about just you chasing somebody, but you also want to be chased.
Yes, you want to be chased. And I want to say one more thing for everyone watching. JobScan came up. Oh, how could I forget this? JobScan came up with a list of people who are, leading voices when it comes to job search. Mark is one of them. In fact, there are 25 names in there, and every single one, almost every single one of them has a video in there with top tips. Watch those videos if you're very serious, because those tips are coming from their experience, they're coming from the
Hmm.
heart, and they're actionable. Like you can actually do something about it. And one
You're
of the
on
things,
that list too, aren't you?
I'm on that list too. It's a big honor.
Yes, it is.
It's a big honor.
Congratulations.
I think I'm
Yes.
probably one of two only people out of North America, and it's like, oh, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
So I want to. One of the things I say in that video is start a club. Brittany says you're not alone. Where is it? Yeah, start a club with people who are going through what you're going through. There's so many ways to make this work.
Hmm.
Guys, I'm gonna go and choose one or two questions more because Mark has to go, but I have to go and get my kids because otherwise they're gonna be left in
Right.
school, and I'm not gonna do
Right.
that. Kevin's here. Hey, Kevin. Good morning. And I have ignored one lovely lady who's been waiting patiently. I'm so glad you guys are here. Our regulars are here on Supercharge Fridays. Um, Payal, where are you, Payal? I know you're there. There. Okay. Payal. Talking with employees is still okay because if you ask them the kind of projects they're working on, but what exactly should we talk with recruiters on LinkedIn without looking desperate for a job?
Oh, that's such a good question. And there's ways to passively, um, contact and engage recruiters. And one way is to like and be interested in what they're talking about. So if they're talking about how candidates are not showing up and are not telling the truth or whatever, support it in some kind of way. It could be as simple as a like, but you want to evolve from there. But at least begin there.
Yeah. And comment with substance, network openly like in a public place, and then when you think
Hmm.
the strike when the iron is hot, then you go into this, you slide into their DMs, right? But then
Yes.
you're a familiar face, you're not a somebody from the street. So that's
Absolutely.
fabulous tip, and it's never been easier, Payal. It's never been easier, thanks to a platform like LinkedIn, to be able to do that. Can you imagine back in the day, people would go to these big fat phone books and actually look, how do I reach out to this person? What office
Well,
are
you
they
had
in?
to you have to use meetings and conferences and what have you to and rely on a lot of people you already knew, including coworkers. Sometimes it's a little tricky, even trying to network with other coworkers because outside of that, because you don't ever want to tip off someone that you're looking for a job. So
Exactly,
you have to
exactly.
navigate wisely.
Exactly. No, that's a very good point. Inda, I see you have a question. I promise I'll answer you, but I'll have to answer you after the live because I have a very detailed video on how to do well if you've just started in your new job. But I want to focus on
Mm,
people whose needs are a slightly more urgent and time sensitive. I'm not saying yours is not urgent,
mhm.
but I know you recently got a job, Inda, and congratulations. She's in Indonesia and she's been following Supercharged Fridays for many, many
Awesome.
weeks. Ah, yeah, awesome. So Priyanka says, how do you make the employer and hiring manager? How to make the employer and hiring manager that you are a good catch for them because I have the skills that they want, but I'm still not able to get the offer letter or response from them.
Hmm. There's a lot of questions that need to be answered to really answer this adequately. First of all, you can't make the employer do anything. It's so like making you give me $10. That's how hard it is. Uh, the other thing, the other thing that you have to keep in mind is okay, it's not a matter of just them thinking you're a good catch for them. You're not a fish. You're a person. You had so you've got to make yourself some. You got to know what they want first. If you're not clear on what they want, it's going to take a little bit more than a nice personality to for them to pull you aboard. So I would say it's very difficult just to make somebody a company. Let's say you are targeting a company that you like and you really want to be hired. Then don't just wait on the hiring managers. Try to find employees that can possibly refer you if you haven't gotten into an interview yet. See if you can get referred, start to build some relationships within that company. In fact, I would say try to go for 5 people that you connect with and start to build relationships with them because that's how referrals come and people get jobs through referrals and not only they get jobs with the referrals but they stay with the company longer after you get the referral and get hired. So I would say try to get the referral. Don't wait for employers to catch you. And I think, and I'm not sure if she even defined if she knows the employer and hiring managers.
Yeah.
But having said that, if you want to get inside a company, try to get the referral, use LinkedIn and make connections, have relationships, create value for people you connect with, and you'll increase the possibilities.
Exactly. And Priyanka, this is a great time for learning. And I think Gavin talks about it as well. It's all, everybody's different. You know your self-worth. You're very positive. So that's great. You're a bit perplexed. Why aren't they calling me? Like I'm great. This is a
Mhm.
great time for reflection and introspection and in a very practical way, like looking at your resume and thinking, if I'm so great, what's going on? What can I fix? And it also means asking uncomfortable questions, which
Right.
a lot of us don't want to ask. Whether it is always helpful if you hire a coach. It doesn't always have to be an expensive coach. It can be a friend that you trust.
Mhm.
But there could be reasons that you don't know. You may have blind spots because if everything is great, then yes, you should have got an offer by now. But the other thing I want to say is if everything is as it should be, then sometimes it's a question of following up. Like, let's say
Right.
you've had interviews, follow up. People are like, I don't want to look too desperate. No one cares. No one has time to think about themselves. They're too busy with their own drama.
Absolutely.
Going on with their own
Absolutely.
life. Yeah. So
Right.
awesome. Fabulous. So we're getting a lot of appreciation for everything that you're doing. And
Good.
Prashant, thanks for joining us. I suggest you go and watch the replay because we did talk about, what are the different things you can do when you're unemployed, when you're actively looking for a job. And I have very detailed broadcast on it as well because I've been laid off three times. So
Mhm.
it's, I'm still standing. Um, and Mark, what is it that if you could share? And I asked Jack Kelly the same question when he was here. What is the most underrated piece of advice that you wish more people knew?
Every recruiter wishes job seekers do that. You can talk to the recruiters, and recruiters can actually provide pretty useful intel. Um, Jack is a very approachable guy as a recruiter, as well as many of the people, friends you and I know, are very approachable. In fact, they recommend you even talking to them. And even if you have a relationship with them, as far as them recruiting you, they give you the insight because they want you to have the job. They may have other people in line, but if you're asking the right questions, if you're looking for opportunities to create value for their clients, which is the company, if you're looking to create value for them, then they'll appreciate it. It may not even be that exact opportunity, but there might be future opportunities even. So don't think of recruiters as just this transactional thing.
Exactly.
Talk to
Keep in
them,
touch. Yes.
talk to them now, and then build that relationship because it will pay off if you later in some kind of way if you do it right.
Yes, perfect. That's wonderful way to end. Keep in touch with recruiters. You never know when you need them. Don't forget them when things are great. Stay in contact. Ask them how you can help them because they always have deadlines and everybody's on their head and everybody wants yesterday. Like, I want this yesterday. So you never know. Maybe you can help them. Maybe you have a friend in mind and they're looking for someone and you know of a good match. Don't just go to them when you need them. It's normal that you go to them now and that you need them. That's okay. But
Mhm.
then don't forget about them. They're very
Right.
useful people to keep in contact with. So
Right.
fabulous. I'm so glad, Gavin, that you were here and you had patience to stick with us. We had a lot of questions. Hopefully, you enjoyed it. I hope we can see you next week. And I'm going to talk about next week in a second. But I want to say a quick thank you to everyone who's been with us today. Lots of lovely people. I'm going to do a quick
Mhm.
shout out. Suganthan, Samriddhi, Sally, Sandesh, Gavin, Lee, Kevin, Jack, good Lord, lovely folks who are here. Ridwan, beautiful question. We enjoyed it. Brittany, Adina, let's see, Lilin, um, Amitesh, everyone, Sandesh, Sonia, Abhishek, CC, Devika, John, Leland. Thank you so much for being with us today. Risto, Bala, you guys are so cool. More names than I can. I'm going to be here a while if I do that. But this was an absolute pleasure. I want to say a big, big thank you to Mark. Mark, don't go. I'm going to end the broadcast, but don't go. And for everyone who's watching, this was week 59 and week 60. Next week, I'm going to take quick 20 seconds and talk about it. We have a very, very interesting topic. Our topic is humor. Can a sense of humor actually help your career? Can a sense of humor help your job search? Can a sense of humor help your sales? We're going to talk about it with two actually really funny guys. Like they genuinely make me laugh. They're on Clubhouse. That's where we met. And they're on LinkedIn as well. Their name is Harrison Kaufman and Pete Can. I'm going to tag them in this stream in the link. And yes, once again, huge thank you, Mark. You are so generous with your time, and we really, really appreciate you being
Sure.
with us today.
Right. It was great to be here. Loved every second.
Perfect. Thank you, and take care, everyone. Thank you for being with us today. Be safe, do the right thing. Don't forget your masks. This isn't over. Take care of
Right.
yourself. Bye, everyone.
Right.